welcome to Math 097, Lecture 28. Lecture 28 is going to be a continuation of Section 8.4. So last time we looked at the equation or the formula for a line that was called slope-intercept form. Today, as you look at your handout, you're going to see that we're going to start off with a new formula called point-slope form. And point-slope form is y minus y1 is equal to m times the quantity x minus x1. Now, one of the comments that I made last time was that not only do you want to remember the formula, but you also want to remember the name of the formula because it tells you when that formula is going to be helpful. So because this formula is called point slope, it's going to give us information about a point and it's going to be giving us information about a slope. So as you look at this, notice we have x1 and y1. Those are going to be the coordinates of a given point. And we also have our good friend m, that's going to be our slope. And that's why this is called point-slope form. So now that we know that, we're ready to check out example 1. Now, the very first thing I notice in example 1 is that they gave me a point. So that means then that I know my x1 and my y1 value. So again, if this formula is going to be helpful, that means that the other piece of information that they had to have given to me was the slope. And they did give me information about slope, but they gave it to me in terms of other words. They told me that our line is perpendicular to this other line, y equals 1/3 x plus 7. Now, if you didn't catch that, I'm going to say it again. Our line is perpendicular to this other line. So our line is not y equals 1/3 x plus 7. So we can't simply come in and plug in this negative 4,2 into this equation and expect anything useful to happen. Because once again, this is not our line. It's some other line that they're describing. So what we need to do then is figure out how to take this idea of perpendicular to another line and use that to find the slope of our line. Well, we need to go back and talk about some of the ideas we talked about in lecture 27 again. So first off, notice y equals 1/3 x plus 7 is written in slope-intercept form. And because it's written in slope-intercept form, we can read off the slope of that line. So the slope of this line is m1 is equal to 1/3. Now, our line is perpendicular to that line. So think back to the definitions we were talking about in lecture 27. In lecture 27, we saw that if two lines were perpendicular, their slopes were negative reciprocals of each other. So that means that our line is going to have a slope of, well, okay, first of all, we have to have negative. So that means there's going to be a sign change between these two slopes. The slope down here is positive 1/3. So our line has to have a negative slope. And then the second word was reciprocal. So we take the fraction 1/3 and flip it. 1/3 flipped becomes 3/1. 3/1 is really just 3. So that means then that our line has a slope of -3. So now that we have all three of these pieces of information, the x1, the y1, and the slope of our line, we're ready to go ahead and find the equation of our line. So what I'm going to do is plug all this information into point-slope form now that I have my point information and my slope information. So we're going to have y minus y1. Well, y1 is 2. And that's equal to m. Well, the slope of our line is -3 times the quantity x minus x1, and our x1 is -4. Well, now we have the subtraction of a negative. Subtracting a negative is the same as adding, so we have y minus 2 is equal to -3 times the quantity x plus 4. Now, depending on the directions for the problem, we have a variety of different places we can go at this point. So right now, this equation is written in point-slope form. So if you happen to have a problem where it said write your equation in point-slope form, you would be done at this point. Our problem, however, says that they want us to write down our final answer in slope-intercept form. So in order to get this into slope-intercept form, remember that y equals mx plus b has the y alone on the left-hand side. That means we need to come in and solve this equation for y. So in order to do that, I'm going to start by distributing this -3 through. So we're going to have y minus 2 is equal to -3x, and then -3 times +4 is going to be -12. So now that I have that, then I'm almost to the point that I'm wanting to be. I almost have that y alone. So in order to get the y completely alone, the last thing I'm going to do is add 2 to both sides. So if I add 2 to both sides, I get y is equal to negative 3x, and that negative 12 plus 2 is going to be negative 10. Well, that equation is written in slope-intercept form, and that is what they requested on this particular problem. However, different problems are going to ask you to write your answer in different formats. So you always want to make sure that you read the directions and write down the format that was requested. So you'll notice on your handout, I have a spot for other possible notations. So one other possible notation is to write this in function notation. So if we write this in function notation, we talked about this last time, you're simply going to take that y on the left-hand side and replace it by the expression f of x. So f of x, same as y, is equal to negative 3x minus 10. So you'll find that one of your homework problems in My Lab Math tonight is going to ask you to write your answer in function notation. So just make sure that you use the f of x for the y. And then finally, there's another notation called standard form. What standard form does is take the equation that we were looking at a moment ago in slope-intercept form, and it simply takes all of the variables and moves them to the left-hand side. And it puts the x terms first, then the y terms on the left-hand side, and then the constant will be on the right-hand side of the equation. So in order to make that happen, when I look at slope-intercept form, in order to get all my variables on the left-hand side, I need to add 3x to both sides. So adding 3x to both sides gives me 3x plus y is equal to negative 10. And once again, standard form has the x term first, then the y term second on the left-hand side, and then a constant over on the right-hand side of the equation.